Hello, everyone. Um, my name is Larissa, and I produce Christian faith-based content. Here you'll also be getting some family and also lifestyle content. Um, but for the most part, it'll be a lot of Christian faith-based content. As you can see at the bottom there, I will be doing discussion on the book of Job, chapter 1 through 5. And I'm pretty sure we all have heard of the book of Job, heard the story of Job, and basically how his life, how he started off this wealthy man in the East, and um, went through some hardships, some trials and tribulations, and not once, if read the book, not once did he frown upon God, did he turn away from the Lord. So I will be going through chapters 1 through 5, a discussion. Um, so we're gonna just start and jump in. So in chapter 1, I'm gonna read chapter 1 verses 1 through 3. There once was a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz. He was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God and stayed away from evil. He had 7 sons, 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, 500 female donkeys, and he also had many servants. And he was, in fact, the richest man in that entire area. And actually, I'm reading from the NLT, but in the New King James Testament, version, it says he was the greatest in all of the East. So he influenced a lot of people over over East in that area. A lot of people looked up to him. Um, he was up like it's like the Bible says he was a blameless and upright man. He shunned evil and he was just perfect in the eyes of the Lord. And his children, he has like it says he has 7 sons and 3 daughters. So his sons, as it says in verse 4, his sons would take turns preparing feasts in their homes, and they would invite their sisters over to partake in these festivals, in these festivities, and these parties. In the New King James Version, it says on their appointed day. And we're going to assume and go with the fact that it's their birthdays that they're celebrating. So, um, yeah, so they would have parties, and their father, out of fear and concern that they may have parties just so hard, they may have did some things that was frowned upon to the Lord, and he didn't want any sin coming. He didn't want any wrath or disobedience coming towards him or his children for their partying or anything like that, because it also states that in verse It says that in verse 5, when these celebrations ended, sometimes after several days, Job would purify his children. He would get up early in the morning and offer a burnt offering for each of them. And a burnt offering is basically a reconciliation um, offering back for to be reconciled back to the Lord. It's a sin offering. If any of them may have sinned in their hearts or, spiritually, physically, he wanted to clear that sin and, make atonement for their sins if they have possibly sinned. And it says that Job, he would purify his children. He would get up early in the morning and offer burnt offering for each of them. For Job said to himself, perhaps my children have sinned and have cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular practice. Um, so going forward with that, the enemy has to show his face some type of way. Job is a book of wisdom, it's a book of understanding. Um, a lot of the times we don't know why we go through a lot of things that we go through. We don't know why a lot of the time God puts us through well, I'm not gonna say God, but it's a lot of, you know, we have a lot of questions as to why this and why that is happening to me and this and the third. Overall, the book of Job, it's a book of wisdom, and it's to let you know that, hey, you're going to go through tests and trials and tribulations. Um, but as your Lord, as your God, I'm in it with you. I am with you. You are not alone. So continue going forward. Um, One day it says that one day, this is verse 6, chapter 1, verse 6. One day the members of the heavenly court came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser, Satan, came with them. Where have you come from? The Lord asked Satan. Satan answered, I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. Then the Lord asked Satan, have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. And I'm going to stop there for a moment. Integrity is just not all about your reputation. As I studied and I looked on, um, it's definitely not just about your reputation, how people see you, how they view you. Your integrity starts in the heart. It starts in the heart. Do you have morality? Are you honest? Do you have a conscience? Are you a good person inwardly? Not just outwardly, not just what people see and, oh, well, I'm going to act this way and act that way. And a lot of people can be wolves in sheep's clothing. It's not about what all a lot of the time what people see on the outside, but mostly what's on the inside. The integrity starts in the heart, the mind and the heart. Do you have a clear conscience? Do you have a good conscience to do good? Do you have a good heart to, you know, um, are you good to people? Are you good to those around you? You know, are you good to your children? Are you good to your friends, your family? It's not about, a lot of times, like I said, the reputation. So back to um the back to chapter back to verse 8. Then the Lord asked Satan, "Have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil." Satan replied to the Lord, "Yes, but Job has a good reason to fear God. You have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property." Now, pause. We're going to stop for a moment right there. Also, Job was blessed, okay? He was in God's grace. He was in God's mercy. He was very, very pleased with Job, to the point where the enemy even saw and was watching him thrive and be abundant and be a blessing to others, and just live a complete sinless life. And not only that, he had influence. People looked up to him. They s- they they um they looked up to him, and the enemy didn't like that. Obviously, as it says, you have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property, which means he possibly have already tried to do something to Job. He already tried. God said, "Mm-mm, no, no, touch not my anointed, touch not my blessed." So, um, yeah, just going forward, he's like, "Have you not always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property? You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is." It's like he's mad. He's upset that he's that God has blessed him. He has his hand upon him. He's not just, he's not just filled with the Holy Spirit. God has rest his hand over everything that he does and he touches. And the enemy is mad about it because he is looked upon as, the one of the great men of all the East. People are looking at him. When you have influence and people look up to you, they want to, let's just be real. A lot of the times people, they want to know what you're doing. They want to do what you're doing, and they want to know what's driving you. How are you living like this? How are you getting these things? And of course, Job, he's a blameless man, as it says in verse 1. He feared God and stayed away from evil. So where did these blessings come from God. And it's going to influence other people to want to live upright, to want to honor God, to want to worship God, to want to be obedient. So basically, Job had territory. He had dominion over his area where he lived in us, over east. And the enemy didn't like that. Um so going forward, um the enemy, of course, as it says, also it shows in chapter 1 that the enemy still has access to certain parts and areas of heaven. It doesn't mean that he's there. He doesn't live there. He doesn't reside there. As it says in the Bible, that He is the prince of this world meaning this earth. He has territory over the earth. Just as it says also in the book of Revelation, he was kicked down from heaven when he felt as though he didn't have to worship God. He didn't want to obey God. He wanted to be God. So he got kicked down from heaven. So, upon that, he lost his position. He lost his position and his title. So he's definitely not he's obviously still an angel, but he's a fallen angel. Um, but yes, he had access to certain parts and corners of the heavens. And the angels, they came and gathered, and he decided to show up, and as it says, yeah, he decided to show up and basically question, basically he showed up to be nosy and see what was going on, and God being, all knowing, all seeing, he knows everything. He already knows that the enemy has been watching Job. He already knowing that the enemy wants to try something with him. So it's not as if, he was putting him up and serving him up on a chopping block. He knew that Satan had his eyes on him because of his envy, his jealousy, and he didn't like clearly how God was blessing him and had him covered from every which way. So, um going forward in verse 11, it says, but reach out and take away everything he has. He will surely curse you to your face. All right, this is what God is saying. All right, you may test him, the Lord said to Satan. Do whatever you want with him. Do whatever you want with everything he possesses. Sorry about that. But don't harm him physically. So Satan left the Lord's presence. One day, when Job's daughters were feasting at the oldest brother's house, a messenger arrived at Job's home with this news: your oxen were plowing with the donkeys feeding beside them when the Sabines raided us. They stole all the animals and killed all the farmhands. Farmhands are basically your paid helping hand, your paid workers, your additional workers that you have come in to help you tend to your farm, to your fields, whatever it is that you need help with. And so that was the first uh disaster. Then a second comes and this is verse 16, while he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with this news: the fire of God has fallen from heaven and burned up your sheep and all the shepherds. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. Then a third. While he was still speaking, a third messenger arrived with news. Three bands of Chaldean raiders have stolen your camels and killed your servants. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived. Your sons and daughters were feasting in their oldest brother's home. Suddenly, a powerful wind swept in from the wilderness and hit the house on all sides. The house collapsed, and all your children are dead. Verse 20. Job stood up, tore his robe in grief. Then he shaved his head and fell to the ground to worship. He said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gave me what I had, and the Lord has taken away. Praise the name of the Lord. In all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. Whew, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. And honestly, um, let's be real here. Uh, Job was pretty strong. Not like many of us today. His faith was strong. Not like many of ours today. Because I feel like if that happens to possibly anyone. Now, mind you, this is my God. This is long, 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 long time ago. 2000 probably plus years long ago. Um, I don't believe especially the way the world is going now today, no one would be able to endure that. And the way he responded, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh. People today would be like, you know what? This, I don't know. Where were you? That's where the questions would become to pour in. And our faith would be rattled and shaken. I mean, we've all been there. I've been there. I'm sure you have been there as well. We question and we want answers, and it's like you don't question God. Everything happens for a reason. Um it's a lot of times it's built to the a lot of times things happen to build your strength, to really reveal who you are within yourself. um yeah, so it's like, who are you to question the ultimate being? At the end of the day, we are mere mortals. We are mere human beings. um so yeah, I was like, yeah. And then going to chapter 2, they're having another meeting. I'm in verse I'm in chapter 2, verse 2 of the NLT, and it says, one day the members of the heavenly court came again to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser, Satan, came with them. Where have you come from? The Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. Then the Lord asked Satan, have you not noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God. he's basically letting him know once again, you know, this is my child, like he's obedient. He's obedient. He's a child of God. He he hates evil. He hates everything that I hate. And there's a verse in the Bible that says that too. To love the world is to be a enemy of the Lord's. And Job wasn't with that, okay? He frowned upon everything the Lord frowned upon. So, back to verse back to verse 4. Satan replied to the Lord, skin for skin. Like he was mad, y'all. A man will give up everything he has to save his life, but reach out and take away his health, and he will surely curse you to your face. All right, do with him as you please, the Lord said to Satan, but spare his life. So this just goes to show you once again the enemy, he, like it says in the Bible, he is a lion, a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. Key word may. He's limited. He can't do anything without God's permission, without God's stamp, without God's approval. And he loves all of us. He's a faithful God. He's a good God. Yeah, the enemy, he's a roaring lion. He's angry. He's upset. He knows his time is short, and the way to hurt God is through his children, which is us. Um, so yeah, verse 6, he says, all right, do with him as you please, the Lord said to Satan, but spare his life. So Satan left the Lord's presence, and he struck Job with terrible boils from head to foot. Job scraped his skin with a piece of broken pottery as he sat among the ashes. His wife said to him, are you trying to maintain your integrity? Curse God and die. And this right here, also, I'm going to pause again. This right here, ultimate disrespect. Ultimate disrespect to the Lord. She's basically telling him, are you still having hope? Are you still faithful in your Lord? Why are you um why are you still worshiping him? Why are you still honoring him? Look what has happened to you. Basically, blaspheme God and die. And I don't know if a lot of people know this or not. I had to ask the Lord myself. Like I know we don't know everything. And I'm like, Lord, what is because it says it in the Bible too, you can pray for anyone who's living in sin. You can pray for anyone who's going through trials and tribulations, who's worldly, that's what the children of the light, children of the kingdom, we are here to expand our good fruit, to help one another, to love one another, to uplift one another, to be there, for one another when we are going through things. Um, so yeah, I don't understand why she would go that extra mile to blaspheme, to say, okay, just, give up, blaspheme him and die. When, like I said in the Bible, it literally says that is a sin that you cannot come from. You cannot come back from. You're basically saying he's not real, he doesn't live, as if there was no death, burial, and resurrection. No, no. So yeah, continuing on in chapter 2, verse 10. But Job replied, "You talk like a foolish woman. Should we only accept good things from the hand of God and never anything bad?" So in all of this, Job said nothing wrong. Um, so yeah, it's like all of this was going on around him. All of this was happening to him. And he literally didn't have no good support, y'all. And I'm sure everyone has been there as well. You go through things. I know I've definitely been there. Um, definitely been there. We go through things, trials and tribulations and tests, and we don't have the right people a lot of times around us to uplift us, to give words of encouragement, to pray for you. Instead, they gonna say, "Oh, well, look, just like his friends did. Oh, well, you must have did something wrong. What did you do? You must have did this, that, third." Child, this is you do for a bad season. You did something, you know. That's what his friends had basically assumed and come to the conclusion of. And like I said, as we see in verse 8, is this verse? Yeah, in chapter 2, verse 8, this is what we see. His wife is basically like, "Look, dude, your God ain't got him. Okay, he let all this happen to you. He can't be that good of a God." And that's crazy. Like I said, we all have them type of people in our life, if not just no one at all, possibly, that will not be uplifting to you in your most worst, horrible times during a season. And that's not good. That's not good. Um, so yeah, going forward to chapter 3, Job basically he curses his entire existence. He curses the day he was born, the night he was conceived. He's basically speaking of death upon himself. Um he's he has come to a point where it's just like he's like, listen, he's dealing with a lot of anguish, a lot of strife. He's not happy at all. He's saying, like in verse 11, "Why wasn't I born dead? Why didn't I die as I came from the womb? Um, why give light to those in misery?" This is verse 20, "and life to those who are bitter." He's going through a lot of emotions. He's feeling a lot of emotions. And verse 24, starting at verse 24, chapter 3, he says, "I cannot eat for sighing. My groans pour out like water. What I have always feared has happened to me. What I dreaded has come true. I have no peace, no quietness, and I have no rest. Only trouble comes." Job was going through it. Excuse me. And like I said, he didn't have really good friends that came to uplift him. And that's something that the Bible speaks on as well. When you're going through a great deal of grief, of sadness and depression, the best thing to do, which I didn't know myself at the time either, you're supposed to stay uplifted, keep your eyes on God, pray more, read your Bible more, read the word more, and um stay uplifted in good spirits, because the enemy, those are strongholds. For the enemy, they are strongholds, there are footholds, there are ways that he can come in and just spread his works, do his thing. Um, and that's not what you want. You'll find yourself in isolation, you not doing the things that you once loved to do. Um, you'll eventually just be wasting away. And you're supposed to stay joyful, in the midst of it all. Seek God. Um, honestly, it brings you to a place of more earnest prayer, seeking God, not to, let me correct this and say this, not to question him, but to lay everything at his feet. Your depression, your sadness, your anger, it's literally communing with God. Only he can fix all of these things. Of course, yeah, if our eye gouges out, we can go to a physical hospital and they may be able to put it back in. They may be able to save it. If you break your arm, you can go, they can pop it back. If you scrape or bust your knees up, you can go to the hospital. They can fix you up, they can patch you up. But something so internally and deep like that, baby, you're going to need your spiritual doctor, your spiritual father, for that healing to take place. That is not something that drugs, alcohol, whatever you are using in substance, that is not something that can heal you or fix that. If anything, is going to prolong it, and it's going to put you in a situation where, once again, where the enemy can come in and continue his works through you. um so yeah, going on to chapter 4, you know eventually, what was that? Okay, so yeah, and basically his friends, after all of that had happened to him, they heard what had happened to him and everything that was going on. So they came to visit. But again, they came to visit to see really how bad was it and is it true. So, because they came, but they weren't helpful. They weren't helpful. His friends, Eliphaz, the Temanite, Bildad, the Shuhite, and Zophar, the Namathite, they came to visit, you know, and try to, I guess they thought they were being consoling, but they were not. Um they definitely were not. They were not being as uplifting as a friend could be. So we're in chapter 5, and yeah, his friend Eliphaz, this is chapter 5, Eliphaz's response. He basically continues to go on and say, um, you know, if you hadn't done anything, why is all of this happening to you? And to be more direct, um, to be more direct, I'm going to start, and this is chapter 5, verse 3. Eliphaz, he says, I have seen that fools may be successful for the moment. Basically, he called his friend a fool. I have seen that fools may be successful for the moment, but then comes sudden disaster, calamity. Their children are abandoned far from help. They are crushed in court with no one to defend them. The hungry devour their harvest, even when it's guarded by brambles. The thirsty pant after their wealth, but evil does not spring from the soil, and trouble does not sprout from the earth. People are born for trouble as readily as sparks fly up from a fire. His friends are not positive at all. They are not uplifting at all. Um, yeah, this is it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, they are they are literally not uplifting friends whatsoever. Um, and then chapter 5 also verse 10 it says, He gives rain for the earth and water for the fields. He's speaking of God. He gives prosperity to the poor and protect those who suffer. He frustrates the plans of schemers, so the work of their hands will not succeed. He traps the wise in their own cleverness, so their cunning schemes are thwarted. They find it is dark in the daytime, and they grope at noon as if it were night. He rescues the poor from the cutting words of the strong and rescues them from the clutches of the powerful. And so at last the poor have hope, and the snapping jaws of the wicked are shut. So yeah. Eliphaz is just like he kind of going in on him. He's basically, like I said in the sort of in the beginning, he's like, you know, if you were such to sum everything up, if you were such a good man, if you were so upright, if you were so blameless and this, that, and the third, um, why is all of this happening to you? Is he's basically giving a rundown of how God protects his children, how God protects his own, how God blesses his own, and how God doesn't allow uh bad like does no bad things happens to God's children. When, I mean, let's be real, It didn't say that he would ever leave or forsake us. It never. He will never leave or forsake us. My bad. He will never leave us or forsake us. But it also says that being here on earth, living in the world, not being of the world, but living in the world, that we will go through trials and tribulations. We will go through trials and tribulations and tests, but He will be with us through it all. It does not say that He will leave us. He loves us. He went on the cross and laid His life down for us. So, yeah, his friend Eliphaz, all of them were just, they're not the kind of friends. I'm sure all of us, we have experienced that as well. They are not the kind of friend that um you will definitely want around you going through calamity, experiencing hardship, you know. No. Um so that is my summing up of the book of Job, chapters 1 through 5. I hope you enjoyed it and love y'all. Peace.